Hi class, welcome to Justice 305 Session B in spring 2017. I'm just recording this first video so that you get to know who I am, you can see who I am, and that you get to really understand what to expect in this class. I'm just going to go over some of the expectations that I've already laid out for you in the syllabus and the course schedule and just elaborate on some of them. So if you grab your syllabus from the course shell, you'll see the dates, which is March 13th to April 28th. And I just want to highlight that I really treat this course like an introduction level course that you would have in any other field. Justice 305 is typically the introduction course to our department for transfer students. And then, of course, I know that there are lots of you who are in this because you need an elective or you're just interested in it. And I think the diversity of opinions that can be gained from the online community is really helpful to fostering really good dialogue. There are 49 or 50 people in this class, and so I've broken up your discussion element into groups just so that you can actually get to know some people well, like you would have in an in-person format. So this introduction level course is really constructed to give you a broad overview of lots of areas of justice studies. I obviously can't cover everything. I can't cover everything as in depth as I would in a class specifically focused on that topic, but this is to kind of get you excited about whatever areas you have a natural inclination for so that you can understand what some of the background theory looks like. And one of the most important parts to me is that you can see that justice theory is in everyday life and that you can access it in popular news articles, in music, in videos, in just your interactions in your daily life. Theories about justice can be built just through anything, really, because justice is what is the fabric of our society. It's how societies decide that they want to run things. The structures that are built in order to create certain social relationships, certain economic relationships, are all areas of study within the field of justice studies. So the course objectives, I want you to critically read academic articles and books, identify theories of justice from everyday items like blogs, news articles, literature, movies, and music. We have poetry in this class, we have blogs, we have articles, we have a song, we have chapters of books, we have academic articles. So you're going to get a taste of the wide variety of justice theories and how people think about justice. I also want you to create your own theories of justice and injustice based on new information presented to you. My goal in this course is to not completely change your political affiliation or the way that you think government should be run or what priorities you think things like the government should have or priorities that you think communities should have, but rather to help inform whatever position you have. Some of you might change your positions on certain topics. That's really good too. Some of you might not, and that's okay. But at the end of this course, you should be able to articulate better why you have the position that you do and to be able to counter the arguments on the other side. And in order to do that, to build that skill, you're going to be dialoguing with classmates who may think differently than you about the world and issues of justice. I've noticed that in online formats, some students can end up treating it like a Facebook comment thread, and that is inappropriate. Particularly in the specific political climate that we're facing ourselves in right now that's especially divisive, it's completely inappropriate to make personal attacks, which are called ad hominem attacks, on your classmates' positionalities. It's completely inappropriate to make comments on their character. You can attack their ideas, their opinions, through facts, but you cannot attack their actual personhood or their personality or their character or the insinuations that you're making based off of what they're writing. In the same vein, you can't write things that are attacking whole people groups or individual people based off of characteristics and personality traits and things that you may think about them. I have that all later on in the syllabus in the netiquette area. And another way that you're going to be learning how to create your own theories is by conducting your own research, and that's going to be rather limited because of our time frame, and also the paper length is only 7 to 12 pages. But I want you to pick something, the way that I always talk about this, and I'll talk about it more in our Justice Research Methodologies week, is that you need to find something that puts a little spark in you. So something that lights off something inside of you, that you say, hey, that's really interesting. I want to know more about that. And then your classmates and I will help you decide if that's a project that you can actually tackle in this time frame, and I can help you narrow that down as well. And then ultimately, I want you to be prepared to take other courses in the justice studies field. We have lots of different kinds of courses in our department with all sorts of different offerings, and you should be prepared to be in those courses, critically engage with the text, and present your own theory making. I have some expectations for you. You need to critically read the materials assigned for that week. That's why we spend an entire week on understanding fact versus opinion, logical fallacies, and things of that nature. You need to reflect on that material prior to responding to the discussion board prompt. You need to relate that material to your personal views on justice and how your views of justice are changing, growing, and or developing throughout the course. You also need to have thought about how the materials could relate to your chosen justice research area, and you need to apply that day's readings to current events. There are things happening every day. I try to make the syllabus relevant to current events and things that are happening in the world, but I do have to make this in advance, and so I'm not going to be able to respond except in the videos, which I make every weekend, and then I'll post on Mondays typically, unless they get lost. Then that's when I'll talk about current events that I find relevant. I have the breakdown of your course grade. I'm not going to go over that except to let you know that the Blackboard system doesn't help in creating groups very easily, and so you won't be able to rely on I can't see what you see in your grade book, but you can't rely on whatever percentage grade they might be giving you. You need to look at how many points you have for each assignment, add them up yourself, and see where you're falling within this grade rubric, which is why I have how many points it takes to get an A+, an A, an A-, B+, etc. There will be no extra credit opportunities, and I never accept late assignments. I absolutely don't. You have to have documented urgent and extenuating circumstances. Those are not things like your friend is getting married. They are not things like you have to go out of town because you wanted to take a vacation. Those are not things that are extenuating circumstances. They're things like I was in the hospital. I was incredibly sick for 5 days out of 7 days this week, and here's doctor's notes. I've had too many experiences with students who take advantage if I don't require documentation, and I understand that there's some justice-related issues to that as well, and accessibility to healthcare and the expense of that, and I realize that's difficult, but it's just something that because of other students taking advantage of it, I have to do to make sure that no one is getting a free ride in this class. Nobody is struggling through and working through normal everyday life happenings that are difficult to work through, who aren't asking for accommodations while other people are. It's just unfair without the documentation, especially in a 7-week course span. The only extra credit that will be given is if I get 90% back on the course evaluations. I can track how many of you have submitted the evaluations. I obviously can't see who has, so this is like an honor system thing for the class. If 90% of the class submits those course evaluations, then everyone will get an extra percentage point added to their grade. Academic integrity. Do not plagiarize. Everything goes through Safe Assign for your research paper. I can tell if it's something that you haven't written generally. Even if you don't mean to, it can still be plagiarism. Particularly relevant to that is when you look at Melania Trump's speech that was highly replicative of Michelle Obama's speech, and there was a lot of kerfuffle around whether or not that was actually plagiarism. It was. It didn't matter if she meant to or not. You have to check to make sure that you're not repeating things so closely that you end up stealing somebody's ideas without meaning to. Intent doesn't have anything to do with plagiarism. There's an entire section on etiquette. Like I said before, you need to be respectful of your classmates, particularly since you're going to be discussing contentious and topics that may necessitate vulnerability in your answers. Of course, I make accommodations for anyone who's registered for the DRC. I've only they are supposed to let me know if I have students with disabilities in my class. And so if I haven't talked to you about your accommodations, that means that I haven't gotten that notice from the DRC and you need to check with them what's going on. Technology support, do not email me about Blackboard issues. That's not something that I can generally fix. I can fix things like if you are telling me that a page isn't working, or how you let me know that the video that I made before didn't post. Those are things that I can fix, but if it's my assignment won't submit, then I can't fix that. And you have to talk to the Blackboard people, and there's a whole slew of people that you can talk to for technology support. Finally, I want you to remember that amidst all of the things that we're discussing that are really difficult topics, there's light in the world, there's good in the world, there are lots of things that you can do to contribute to that. And I want you to remember to take care of yourselves as well. Self-care is an incredibly important part of being in the justice studies field, making sure that you're doing things that lift your spirit and that can really enrich your life. So that's it for the syllabus. For the course schedule, it's pretty self-explanatory. I have when the group discussion board post is due, when the reply post is due, when quizzes are due, and then in order to make this the research project a little bit more attainable for you to finish and have a good product at the end, I've incorporated the outline and rough draft into the discussion board part of your grade so that your classmates will give you feedback, which is good for you to practice on giving your classmates feedback. And it's also good to have more than just me looking at it. And it's broken down into some sections. So the first is reading critically, the second is research methodologies, the third is economic justice, the fourth is racial justice, the fifth is gender justice, and then we wrap up with some reflections on what this does, what justice research really does for the world and what words can do. So that's it for the logistics. Regarding, I wanted to introduce myself to you in the way that I hope that you introduce yourselves to each other after reading the positionality pieces that I've assigned for this week. Positionality is a word that's often used in the justice research field. It was first started by feminist thinkers to describe that each of us has a unique perspective based off of who we are, which means lots of things: where we were born, where our parents were born, sometimes where our grandparents were born, what our skin color is, what our religion is, what our sexual identity is, what our gender identity is, what our income level is, what education level we have, what class we grew up in versus what class we're in now, where we live in the country, what type of community we live in. There's lots of things that affect our positionality, and our positionality affects our epistemology, meaning the way that we know things is impacted by who we are. So when we look around in the world, how we frame things, what we choose to see, what we don't see, even sometimes we don't make choices on this, but what we see and what we don't see is even affected by who we are and how our brains have been developed over time. So for me, my particular positionality is that I was born and raised in Southern California, in Anaheim. So I grew up around 10 minutes away from Disneyland in a low-income neighborhood. Both of my parents are not college graduates. My father is the son of an Air Force family, and he moved all around the world growing up, and he started college, but he never finished because my grandparents moved in with my parents, and then they had my oldest brother. And so he went to work for our family, and my mom is originally from Zimbabwe, and her family has been in southern Africa since the early 1600s. The first person born there was born in 1627, and we're not entirely sure when the first person went to the Cape of South Africa. My mom immigrated here when she was 21, and her parents followed when she was 23, and that was when my dad stopped going to college, and my mom never went to college either because she was a stay-at-home mom. And I grew up quite poor, And I went, but I was lucky in that even though I grew up in a poor neighborhood, we were on the edge of one of the best school districts in Orange County. And so I literally was 1 block away from being in a different school district where I would have probably not been here teaching you. But my parents had a house that was right where it needed to be for us to get a really good education. And these are all, by the way, these are all ideas that we'll go further into in equity and inequality and things like that and geography. So I grew up going to a really great school system. They had a lot of gifted and they called it gifted and talented education, even though everybody is gifted and talented. And I was fortunate to have teachers that recommended me for that program, even though I didn't have the test scores to get into them. I thrived in school and I really loved it. Reading was my favorite thing. I went to the library multiple times a week and read lots of books, and I just absolutely loved school. That was fostered by my family, even though my grandparents stopped going to school when they were 13, that I grew up with. My parents obviously didn't go to college, but they fostered a love of learning in our house. And I was deeply impacted by that. I was also deeply impacted by education in my college life. I went to a liberal arts private university in Southern California called Chapman University, and I studied political science and history. I double majored, and I minored in Spanish for 2 years and then didn't want to do that anymore because the department was falling apart. But I do speak Spanish, and I loved it there. And then I knew that I wanted to go to graduate school. And while in college, I was exposed to a lot of new ideas. I was exposed to looking at the world through different perspectives, and I really broadened my horizons there, and I hope that you're all having that experience too. I got my master's degree at ASU in social justice and human rights, and my research focused on my family. So my positionality affecting my epistemology is something that's been really central to me in my whole life. My studies focus on race and whiteness and white supremacy, and it's because of my family's experiences in Southern Africa, where although they were not, they were lower middle class, but they still participated in and perpetuated the white supremacist system that ruled Zimbabwe for a very long time. And I've done a lot of research on that, and I think, and race and critical race theory has been directly influenced by my experiences growing up with the privileges that I have as a white woman. I am now getting my PhD and JD at the same time. So I'm getting my PhD in Justice Studies. I'm in my 3rd year of that program, and I'm graduating with my Juris Doctorate in May from the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law, and then I'll be taking the bar in July. And then by next year I should have my PhD as well. My research now focuses on white supremacy in water law, and it also, you're probably hearing my dog growl right now, it focuses on white supremacy in water law, as well as environmental justice issues, and it focuses around the Animas River spill that happened in 2015 near Durango, Colorado, that had the most effect in Navajo Nation in New Mexico. Other parts of my positionality that are really important are things that you can't see. So things in my positionality that are important are that I'm a woman, that I'm white, and I've grown up with white privilege, that I come from an immigrant family, that I come from a poor family, and that I come from not a college educated family. It's also, my faith is important. I'm not going to discuss that explicitly, but that's something really important to me. And that's something that, because of my particular religion, that you couldn't see just by looking at me. I think that sometimes we take for granted that not everybody has had the experiences that we've had growing up. My partner has had very different experiences than me growing up in lots of ways. And I think that when you have discussions with people that have different positionalities from you, that's when you can really start to see what the reality is in the world. Because people move through this world and experience this world in very different ways based off of how they appear to others, how their positionalities read to others, and who they are inside too. That makes a difference, right? So when I move through the world, most people see that I'm a white woman who, you know, that dresses in a typically or stereotypically feminine way, and that means that I'm perceived a specific way, and that I interact with the world in a specific way, and that the world views me a specific way. But because I grew up poor, that also impacts the way that I operate in the world, and the strengths that I have and the weaknesses that I have and the things that I see and that I notice that other people who grew up with a lot of money might not notice. And so these are all things that you need to take into account when you're thinking about why you view an issue the way that you do. How is your positionality, who you were born as and who you've chosen to become? How does that affect the way that you see the world? And that's really the focus of the positionality readings, and also some things that I want you to reflect on in your discussion board posts. You don't have to post anything that you're uncomfortable with sharing with the people in your group. I've had students share things ranging from the fact that they're a cancer survivor to the fact that they have severe bipolar disorder. So it's really up to you what you feel comfortable with. If you can discuss at least the topics that we're going to be discussing in class, so if you can address what your positionality is in regards to race, your gender identity. A lot of folks talk about their sexual identity. Again, you don't have to do anything that you're not comfortable with. And a lot of folks do talk about their economic identity, the class that they feel that they belong to. And again, this is up to your personal comfort. This is not something that's forced. But I do want you to at least think about how your race and gender interact with the world around you. And if you are transgender and you don't want to come out to the class, use whatever gender, whatever positionality you want to discuss. You don't have to tell the class that you identify as transgender necessarily if you're not comfortable doing that. I just really want to focus on the comfort part so that you don't feel like this is making you be vulnerable in a way that you don't want to. So that's it for this week. The readings are posted, the discussion board should be opened, the quiz should be opened, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know you through your discussion board posts and for you to get to know each other. If you have any questions, email me, which some of you have already been doing. Make sure to check the Blackboard site first to make sure that your answer is not already there. And I generally have a 24-hour turnaround policy. If I'm not going to be able to meet that, I will let the class know in advance. Like if I'm going to a place without internet access, I'll let you know. The only other thing is that sometimes I won't get back within a few minutes just because I'm also a student. So I'm taking a full course load right now and I'm very busy and I have class. And so especially on Tuesdays and Thursdays, if you email me in the morning, I probably won't get back to you until the afternoon. So that's just something good to know for the future in general for when you're going to email me. Again, I'm looking forward to this class with you, and I hope that you're all having a great week so far. Thanks.